Hello, welcome to the Euro 2024 preview with me, Martin, obviously Betfair Trading tutor. Now, I wanted to tell you guys about Euro 2024. By the time this goes out, I'm recording this in mid-May. By the time this goes out, it will have actually kicked off for a couple of days. But I think this is a really good time to put it out because actually we will have seen a couple of the matches developing. We will be able to know kind of how the tournament's developing, how teams are playing, things like that. Certain tournaments tend to play out in different ways, but there are definitely some key trends that are very similar between tournaments. And I'm going to go through that today, and we're going to have a look at that stuff for you right now. Now, I'm just going to pull up my notes here because one of the things I wanted to talk about before we get into the outright markets here, I'm going to talk about my opinion on who I think might win, where the value is in the outright markets, etc., etc. But I wanted to start with the Betfair trading angle. Because most of you watching this, if you're watching me, if you're interested in Betfair trading community, it's because you want to trade on Betfair and you want to have success. You want to make money trading this tournament, as do we all. Now, I do not usually trade internationals and cup games. I'm not a massive fan of trading them, partly because a lot of my trading involves historical data, and historical data for internationals is fairly irrelevant. I'll still look at it, but you got to remember the matches are months and months apart. It's not like we're getting the last 10 games in the last couple of months. Sometimes by the time, you could go back and look at the competitive games England have played in the last, I don't know, 2, 3 years. And the team that played the original European qualifiers for this tournament might be totally different to the team that is playing now. Now, obviously, with Southgate, it's not always the way. He tends to keep people in longer than he should. But there will still be quite a lot of changes. People who were regulars that you would probably even forgot were England regulars back then are now nowhere near the team. And I think that's a really interesting thing to look at here. So it's really important to know that the historical data for this, for me, is not quite as relevant. Now, I will look at it because you want to see what teams are in form and what teams aren't. But you don't want to read too much into it. The other thing you don't want to read too much into is friendlies. So unlike club football, when you look at the form, you're going to see a lot of friendlies. You're going to see international friendlies. Now, these kind of fall somewhere in between club friendlies and competitive games in that teams do, players do try a little bit harder in these, but it's still not a competitive game. So the England regulars aren't going to try as hard. It'll be more the squad players, things like that. So they are a bit more important and competitive than normal club friendlies, but I wouldn't put much stock in them. So again, when I'm going to be trading this tournament, it's going to be basically based on what's happening in front of me. And I like trading that way. As you know, I do quite well with the in-play trading. I've done lots of live trading videos for you guys on this channel over the past 10 years doing so. So what I've noticed with these big tournaments is this. In the group stages, and remember, this is where most of the matches will be played. So there's going to be a lot of group games over the first couple of weeks of the tournament before we get into the knockout stages. This is where I'm going to do the bulk of my trading on this tournament. The reason is that these group games are a bit more open than the latter games, which I'll get to in a minute. But what I will say is that what I noticed and what I've done well with in these big tournaments over the past few years is going for a late first half goal. And this strategy works well because you get really good odds quite early on. So, for instance, let's say, I don't know, Germany-Scotland, right? The first game. Let's say Germany-Scotland, which will have already happened. Let's say you watch the first 20 minutes and the teams felt each other out for the first 10, 15 minutes. But the last 5 minutes have been a bit end-to-end and maybe Germany is starting to get on top or maybe Scotland look like they might even nick one, right? At that point, the over 0.5 goals in the first half is going to be around evens or even above evens. Sometimes if you wait it out till 25 minutes, you can start getting towards 2-1, which is a really good price because you don't need to have an incredible strike rate to win then. If you're winning 50% of the time, you're going to make money. So what you want to think here is, are the teams looking like they might score? Has the play ramped up? Or has it been 20 minutes of end-to-end stuff and there just hasn't been a goal? In any of those cases, there could be value in backing the late first half goal. And again, that is something I have had success with in these tournaments, mainly because the odds are so big. Because there is a natural assumption that, well, these teams are playing it tight, they're going to feel each other out, so there might not be a goal in the first half. Now, you will get games like that, of course you will. But this isn't as much of a strategical thing. I don't think this is as much of a strategical thing as we're told, because I think that managers actually go for it a little bit more in group games. Especially when you get a situation where maybe you've lost your first game, you need to win your second one and things like this. I don't think managers are going for the really tight, non-scoring games just to try and get a draw. So this will be a really good tactic. But again, it really heavily relies on knowing that the teams are going for it. So you've got to watch the game. I watch the games. It's not difficult in the Euros either, because a lot of you'll be watching a lot of the games anyway. And just do it on the games you're watching. But it certainly isn't one you just do on every game. And again, this is really important with trading in general. We don't just bet on every game because, well, we like the idea of this strategy. You pick the games that look like there's going to be a goal. And so, yeah, like I said, I've done really well with that in the past. That's one that I will be looking to employ for this tournament. I'm going to talk briefly about the knockout stages. I think they are very difficult to trade. The reason is, you will know I'm a goals guy. I like going for goals. I'm not a massive fan of backing unders. I'm not a massive fan of hoping for nil-nils. Well, these knockout games can be very dull affairs, especially if you get two evenly matched teams. Often, they just want to feel each other out. They don't want to do much. Think the first legs of the Championship playoffs this year. Norwich Leeds, West Brom Southampton. Right? So, 3, 4, 5, and 6th place teams playing each other. Should be great games. Should be great teams in that league. Must score a lot of goals to get that high in the table. Both games were 0-0. And they were really, really dull affairs. Especially the Norwich game, which I watched in its entirety. I didn't watch the full West Brom game, so I can't really comment there. But I can't imagine, given the scoreline, and given what tends to happen in these situations, because this is the key. When you get to the knockouts, no one wants to make a mistake, because a mistake means it's over, right? If you make a mistake, that could be the end of it. The big problem I've always had with extra time is that teams play that way. So extra time often is pointless. It's actually very rare that you get goals in extra time. And maybe actually backing unders in extra time is not a bad strategy long term. I might actually look into that. But anyway, how often does it go to extra time and then go to penalties? And you just think, you might as well have just gone straight to penalties. That's just the way it is a lot of the time. So the teams do play tighter, slower pace games, tightening up, and it tightens up more towards the end of the game as well. So these aren't ones where I go, well, it's 0-0 with 10 minutes to go, I'm definitely going to go for a late goal, unless there's real signs that one of the teams is coming on strong. And the other thing to look out for is watch what the managers do, because if the manager makes a substitution that's defensive, that tells you what they're going to try and do. So you've then got to decide, well, will this one other team score? Because now only one of the two teams can score for you. So you want to make sure that that team is coming on strong, because one of the teams doesn't want to score and is willing to park the bus. And we've all seen situations like that, so you'll know what I'm talking about. So that's how I'm going to trade the actual group games and the knockout stages. Like I say, knockout stages, unless there's big value in a team to go through that I think is underrated, they're not going to be ones I'm massively interested in, but I'll be watching the games, and if something pops up in play, obviously I'm going to take it. What I want to get onto here on my other screen here is the actual winner of Euro 2024. So I've got the Betfair market up here, as you can see. England favourites. I guess statistically you could say this is a great lay opportunity. It's a marginal call for me, because while I don't think we should be favourites, 4.3, it's not mega short. If this was 2-1 evens, I'd probably say, okay, cool, lay that. 4.3 kind of has me, because we do have a very good team. I'm not convinced about Southgate and his tactics. I'm really not convinced about his substitutions or lack of. So I do kind of feel like we'll probably do what we usually do and look like we should win it and somehow mess it up. How we didn't win the last year. When you look back on it now, looking at that Italy team that didn't even qualify for the next World Cup after they won the Euros, how we didn't win against that team with the players we had. But, when you watch the game, Italy were a better team. We were tactically inept, and that worries me here. I actually think this outright market, and you can have a look at this for yourselves, there's nothing that greatly appeals to me here. There's nothing where I go, wow, that's a big price for that team. I mean, if you were going to go for a real outsider, maybe you'd look at Croatia, Denmark, just because of what Denmark did last time. And Croatia do kind of tend to throw a spanner in the works, don't they? They're one of those teams that they always seem to come in underrated. So if I was going to have a couple of quid on each of them, fine. It wouldn't be any more than that, even for someone at my level, because, massive price and you're not really expecting any real return from it. But if you do get a good run, that could be a really good profit. What if you had a gun to my head and said, where's the value? Other than kind of the longer shots, looking more at the front runners here, other than the dark horses that I've just told you about, I'd say France 5.3. I feel like France have got the experience in these situations, and that counts for something. I'd actually have England's and France's odds flipped around. So for me, France are value. It's not huge value. Like I said, don't think there's huge value anywhere here where it's obviously huge value. But I'd say there's marginal value, probably enough value for me to have a bet there. And if they win, because look, the reality is when you're looking at 5.3 as a price, obviously you don't need it to win that often actually to make money. So if you're getting 25% of these come in, you're making a really good profit on it and long term. So and this is how you have to think about Betfair Trading, because I don't think enough people think about this. You're not saying, oh, I think they're going to win. Because if you say something that you think they're going to win, then assumedly you mean you think there's more than a 50% chance they're going to win. So, which I definitely don't think is the case. But here, if you had to say to me, I mean, I think Germany are a bit short. Maybe they've come on leaps and bounds recently. I don't know. But in recent tournaments, they've been awful. I know they're at home, so that does kind of help. But again, it's not the kind of price. I'm not going to be laying a team at 6.8 at this stage. However, if they got deeper and they still weren't convincing me and their odds did come in a fair bit, then they might be an opportunity to lay. If England were playing France and England were favourites, I'd probably really want to lay there. Difficult, because obviously I love to be wrong. It's the beauty of it, really, isn't it? Because if it does come down to England-France and I say I think France should be favourites and England win, well, it's win-win, isn't it? Because England will win the Euros. Brilliant. One of the best moments of my life. And if they don't, well, I'll make some money on France. So maybe psychologically that's the best way to play. But from a value point of view, I would only make that trade. And I feel like that would be a value position. But like I say, nothing huge here, nothing where I'm like, well, I want to go and get in big here. I think the main way to make money from this is going to be getting in at that group stage, looking at the late first half goals, maybe even the late goals in the match if the odds are big enough. Why I like the first half is the odds can be really big. But maybe I fall for it again. And I'm really excited about this Euros. I'm really excited about another international tournament. I'm recording this at a time the club football season hadn't even ended, and I'm already excited about it because it's really not that long to wait now, and it's pretty much straight after the season, the start. So really looking forward to it, and hopefully England do go on and do it. But yeah, like I say, that's my opinions on the trades. I hope you've enjoyed this preview video, guys. Comment, let me know, who do you think's going to win? Because I had some great comments from you last time, some really insightful thoughts. What's your thinking? How are you going to approach and trade Euro 2024? Because I really want this to be a bit of a discussion between us. I'm kind of talking in that way to you now. But I want to give you the thoughts of how a successful trader would look to trade something like this. Because it's not, like I say, it's not really about tips. It's not about, oh, get on this or things like that. What's really going to help you as a trader is getting into the mindset of how can I identify value and how can I take advantage of that? And that's what you should always be thinking of as a Betfair trader. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great week. And most importantly, of course, as ever, I hope you make some money trading on Betfair.